Okay, get this. There's a story about a soldier who fought the Nazis. A soldier who carried live ammunition in the middle of a battle and was officially enlisted in the army. But here's the thing. This soldier was a 500-pound Syrian brown bear. No, I'm not kidding. So how on earth did that happen? Well, let's dive in.
So, let's just imagine for a second. Your country's been wiped off the map. Your army's defeated. You're in exile, a prisoner of war, a survivor. How do you even begin to fight your way back into a world war? For a group of Polish soldiers, the answer was, well, let's just say, not what you'd expect.
Yeah, it started with this. For one Polish company, the path back into the biggest war in history started with them enlisting a 500-pound Syrian brown bear. It all began when he was just a little cub, and believe me, he would grow up to be a true comrade in arms.
All right, so let's properly meet the star of our show. And I want to be really clear about this. We're not talking about some cute, fluffy mascot. This was a soldier, a real one, with a name and a story that starts in, well, pretty much the middle of nowhere.
So picture this. It's 1942, near Hamadan, Iran. A group of Polish soldiers from the 22nd Artillery Supply Company come across a local boy with a tiny, malnourished bear cub. Now these soldiers, they weren't just any soldiers. They were survivors, just freed from Soviet gulags trekking through the Middle East. So when they saw this orphaned cub, you gotta believe they saw a little bit of themselves in him, a fellow soul in need. So they bought him, they named him Wojtek, and they started nursing him back to health with condensed milk, out of an old vodka bottle, of course.
But wait, how in the world did a Polish army company end up in Iran in the first place? Well, the story of the men who found Wojtek is honestly just as incredible as his. To really get it, we have to rewind right back to the very beginning of the war. September 1939. For Poland, this was an absolute catastrophe. The country gets squeezed between two of the most brutal regimes in history, Nazi Germany on one side, the Soviet Union on the other. In a flash, the nation is just gone, wiped off the map. Its army is crushed, and its people are left to face a horrifying occupation. And for anyone caught in the Soviet-occupied zone, the nightmare was just beginning. We're talking hundreds of thousands of people, soldiers, civilians, it didn't matter, rounded up and shipped off to forced labor camps, the gulags, out in the frozen hellscapes of Siberia and Kazakhstan. They faced starvation, disease, just unimaginable conditions. So many of them never made it out. But then, something completely unpredictable happens. In 1941, Hitler turns on his ally and invades the Soviet Union. And you know the old saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. All of a sudden, the Soviets are on the same side as the Allies. So a deal is struck. Stalin agrees to release his Polish prisoners so they can form an army to go fight the Germans. And this new force, led by General Anders, would become known as Anders' Army.
The only way out for them? An absolutely epic trek south. I mean, the scale of this is just staggering. Tens of thousands of starving, emaciated men, women, and children literally walking out of the gulags and heading through the Caucasus Mountains, across the Caspian Sea, into Iran. And it's right here, on this unbelievable journey, that an army of survivors meets an orphaned bear cub.
Okay, so here we are. The soldiers are in Iran, and they've got this little bear cub that's, getting bigger by the day. So how does Wojtek go from being this cute little secret to a totally indispensable member of the company? Let's get into it.
So Wojtek basically grew up on the road with these guys. He became part of the very fabric of the 22nd Company. As they traveled all through Iraq, Syria, Palestine, and Egypt, getting ready to head back to Europe, Wojtek was right there with them. But then they hit a snag. It's 1944, time to board a British transport ship to Italy. And there's a problem. British regulations. No pets or mascots allowed on troop ships. Uh-oh.
But these soldiers were clever. They found a brilliant and honestly hilarious loophole. They went to the authorities and said, "Mascot? What mascot? We don't have a mascot. We have a soldier." And they weren't joking. They formally enlisted him. He became Private Wojtek. He got a rank, a paybook, even a serial number. He was now officially one of the guys.
And man, did he act the part. The stories about Wojtek are just legendary. He would wrestle with his comrades, and he learned not to use his claws. He drank beer right from the bottle. He even picked up smoking, although he usually just ate the cigarettes. There's even a famous story where he cornered an enemy spy who'd snuck into the camp's showers. He wasn't just a soldier. He was a morale machine and a spy catcher to boot. A true brother in arms.
But all this camaraderie,
this incredible bond, it was about to run headfirst into the brutal, grinding reality of war, because the Polish Second Corps, with Wojtek in tow, was heading to Italy. And not just anywhere in Italy. They were going to one of the most infamous, most bloody battlegrounds of the entire Second World War.
Monte Cassino. You have to understand what this place was. For months, Allied forces had thrown themselves against this mountain fortress, this key piece of the German defensive line, and for months they had been slaughtered. Horrific casualties. 3 separate bloody assaults had failed, and now it was the Poles' turn. Their job, do the impossible. Take the monastery.
And just listen to what their commander, General Andras, told them right before the battle. He said, "Go and take revenge for all the suffering in our land, for what you have suffered for many years in Russia, and for years of separation from your families." This says it all, right? For these men, this wasn't just another battle. This was personal. After everything they'd been through, the invasion, the gulags, the long exile, this was their one chance to finally strike back.
And it's here, in the middle of this absolute meat grinder of a battle, that Wojtek has his defining moment. He saw the men struggling to haul these massive, heavy crates of artillery shells up the steep, dangerous mountain paths to the guns. So he just started copying them. He'd stand up on his hind legs, let the men load a crate into his front paws, and then he'd just carry it, walking upright to the gun positions. And everyone who was there swears he never dropped a single crate.
Think about what that must have looked like to those soldiers. His bravery was so incredible, so inspiring, that the 22nd Company did something amazing. They officially changed their unit emblem to a picture of a bear carrying an artillery shell. I mean, what better way to capture the spirit of their company and their most unique soldier? That emblem is still used as a symbol for Polish forces today.
And they did it. The Poles took Monte Cassino. It was a monumental, hard-won victory. But after the war was finally over, their long journey home was about to take one last, absolutely heartbreaking turn.
And here is the gut-wrenching irony of their whole story. They fought, they bled, they won an impossible battle, all for a free Poland. And then they found out that the Allied leaders, Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin, had made a deal at the Yalta Conference. A deal that handed control of Poland over to the Soviet Union, the very same regime that had sent them to the gulags in the first place.
So for most of these soldiers, going home was not an option. They couldn't. Under the new communist government, they'd be treated as enemies, as traitors. So, with nowhere else to go, Britain offered them a new home. The entire Polish resettlement corps, and yes, that included Private Wojtek, was relocated to an airfield in Scotland.
But life moves on. The soldiers started to demobilize, trying to build new lives for themselves. And, well, a military camp just isn't the right place for a full-grown Syrian brown bear. So, with incredibly heavy hearts, his comrades made a tough choice. In 1947, they moved him to the Edinburgh Zoo to give him a safe, permanent home.
And he became a bit of a celebrity there, but he never, ever forgot his family. His old Polish comrades would come to the zoo to visit him all the time. They'd jump the barrier and toss him cigarettes, just like the old days. And people who worked there said that until the very end of his life in 1963, anytime he heard someone speaking Polish nearby, the old soldier bear would always prick up his ears and turn his head. It's just such a powerful story, isn't it? It shows that even in the absolute worst conflicts imaginable, you can find family in the most unexpected places. And maybe it proves that sometimes the best way to hold on your own humanity is to find it in someone or something else.